Welcome to Real People, Real Life, where everyday conversations lead to extraordinary insights. We're all about digging into the lives of regular people who've achieved success on their own terms. From business and entrepreneurship to fitness, politics, education, and beyond, we cover it all. This is Real People, Real Life. And now your host, Ryan Chereau.
Love it. All right. Anthony. Thanks for coming, man. Everybody is... So I've been excited about this because you're the greatest storyteller ever. I'm going to put the pressure on to start.
That's a good compliment.
So let me think. How long have we known each other? Got to be 12 years. Well, it was 2008.
8-ish, yeah.
2008.
Yeah.
So that's 10 plus 4, 14 years.
Yeah. Went quick.
It does go quick, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So why don't you tell everybody where we met?
It's a food processing plant.
Yeah.
Delimex, basically down by the border, the 905 Otay crossing. And our role was basically ammonia refrigeration, which the factory made the food, and our role was to basically freeze the food so that they could package it and essentially sell it, distribute it. And then we met basically with a shift turnover where I believe I was the third shift and then you were the morning shift.
That's correct.
So basically on the third shift or the graveyard shift, which was 9 at night to 5 in the morning, I would be like on the sanitation, and they would have a sanitation shift, essentially cleaning. They wouldn't be producing anything, but they would be cleaning the floor and cleaning the machinery, cleaning the the belts and all the machinery for the packaging of the food and the spiral refrigerator, which was a huge part of our job. They would the sanitation shift would clean it out, and my role was essentially to make sure that this spiral freezer was defrosted, and you on your shift would come in and kind of get it set up for production.
Right, get it started back up.
So it was kind of a shift turnover for about a half an hour or so, and yeah.
So here's what I remember. So I'm the first shift. We got hired about the same time, and I come in, and here comes Anthony, and has that stroll, real kind of looking around, not saying much. Kind of walks up and, hey, I'm Ryan. Yeah, I'm Anthony. I said, hey, Anthony, and so I kind of did my thing. And you didn't say hardly anything. As a matter of fact, probably for the first month, you just observed.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what you do. You kind of fill out your whole environment. And what's interesting, and people that listen to the podcast know that I'm in HVAC and refrigeration. And 2008 was a tough time, because I was in residential.
Oh, yeah.
So, I needed something to pay the bills. And I see the ad for ammonia refrigeration.
Yeah.
Now, this is the apex. This is the big boys. So I go in there and I do my interview. And I'm expecting bucks. This is going to be the high-paying job. I might just stay here for the rest of my life. I mean, they're going to pay me a lot. And they pay me a little over minimum wage.
It was okay. At the time, at the time in my career, I was actually going to school, and I had to. I was taking college courses, undergraduate courses, and the classes that I was taking for my major, they were basically offered during the day. So that's why I took this 9 at night to 5 a.m.
Yeah,
job,
the job was
was
perfect
to
for you.
basically go to school during the day, and they ended up reimbursing my tuition. And at the time, the jobs that I was taking on in HVAC as well, you know, you would go down the street to another employer for $1 or $2 an hour because it made a big difference. You know, a few dollars an hour is worth leaving a job. So, but for this particular job, it was because of the working hours. Essentially, there's no way I would have been able to work a regular, normal working hour job. It just I wouldn't have been able to go to school and take those classes.
What was interesting about that job is you and I. So the plant had to run 24 hours a day because it had a certain amount of ammonia on site. So out of everybody that worked there was 3 people that actually knew HVAC and refrigeration, actually knew refrigeration. It was myself, you, and our supervisor.
Right.
And at the beginning, I was first shift. I was doing refrigeration. I was having a great time. And our supervisor, I don't know what it was, but he decided he did not like me. He got quite intimidated by me because he would work second shift and all the management was there during first shift.
It's pretty typical.
Yeah, and I'm going to all the meetings. And next thing you know, he decides, well, he's going to go ahead and take me off of first shift
Right.
and put me on the night shift, where basically the whole refrigeration plant is shut down. You
Yeah.
become basically a security guard.
It was a punishment.
It was. And what was funny about it, though, is this is when I actually went to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically saw each other in passing. You would leave, I would show up. This is what happened at night. See you later. So I show up on the night shift reluctantly, but hey, that's where they put me. And you showed me the ropes.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the communication that I like to do is to relate, and a lot of the relating would be through songs. Yeah, you know, basically whether it's a classic rock song, or it's a hip hop song, or any type of genre of songs, whether it's music lines or movies. So I've watched a lot of movies. I've listened to a lot of music. I mean, that's how I grew up. And I use those song lines or those movie lines to relate because, a lot of the times somebody that you're talking to will have seen a movie, and you can kind of explain a scenario or relate to a scenario in life with a movie line, or how an actor in a movie or the role that they play is similar to something that you've gone through or that person has gone through. And it's an easy way to relate. And I think it's kind of like, when I was younger, a lot of educated people would cite Shakespeare and famous lines of books that modern day people haven't even read, maybe, or they're just not familiar with. So they would throw these lines out there, and us as kids would be, these are teachers in high school or grade school, and as kids we were like, what is this guy talking about? But we haven't read that book, or we didn't see that play. But I think I might have picked up on this from that, and
Well,
hearing those professors.
You definitely
speak like
did,
that.
because when I show up at the night shift, I don't know that for the first month I didn't say anything, but just sat there and was entertained by you.
Yeah.
You had stories, and it was funny because my impression of you before was this silent giant. He just didn't say anything. He just was observing everything. Then I come to the night shift, and the stories start rolling.
Well, you work alone, and I've worked shifts alone, and there's not many people to talk to. So, it's if you have an opportunity to talk to somebody, you're going to take advantage of it. But
Well, the job worked out great for you. So what was interesting is you were newly married, correct?
Yeah.
And you got a full-time job, and you
Right.
decide, I'm going to go ahead and take the night shift so that I can go to university and
Right.
get my mechanical engineering degree.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So, the mechanical engineering degree, when I was in the Navy, my rate was a diesel engineman, or an EN engineman, and we basically learned right out of boot camp. You went to a technical school for a few months, and they called it an A school, and it was for diesel engine overhaul. So I learned how to become a mechanic, and then about 2 years into my enlistment, they sent me to school for air conditioning and refrigeration, AC&R school, which was a really prized school. It was something where, if you got that school, it was just, it was very rare to get, and it was, you could tell, when you told somebody, hey, I got this school, or, it was very rare to get. So I really enjoyed the fact that I was able to get this school. And when I went to it, it was just natural where I picked it up, and I really enjoyed it. I liked the diesel engine. I liked the mechanic. I liked the turning of the wrenches, being able to overhaul engines, and working on things as a mechanic. I liked that, and I think that would have probably been a default career if I wouldn't have taken this air conditioning and refrigeration school course. And but I picked it up, and then at the time I saw, I think that this is something that financially, I think this is going to work. The careers that I was looking at on the outside were paying a little higher than typical jobs. So I thought, I think this is good. I'm going to go down this path, and that's kind of what my career built off. So taking the air conditioning refrigeration, a lot of the mechanical drawings that you're working with when you're going through buildings or systems, you're looking at these mechanical drawings. I thought, all right, well, if you're going to go to school and you're going to get a degree, mechanical engineering would be the way to go. So that's kind of where that path took off. I was a technician, and then I thought, well, why don't I become an engineer? Also, I would go into these storehouses, supply houses for air conditioning and refrigeration, taking the service calls, doing the preventive maintenance, ordering parts, ordering materials. And I'm looking around, and I'm going, wow, there's a lot of guys doing this job, and a lot of them are, they're in their 50s. They're in their high 40s, 50s, maybe even early 60s. And I'm saying, is this something that I want to do for the rest of my life? Or is if I go to school, can I take it to the next level? And that was kind of what pushed me to taking those classes and going to school. Plus the cost of living in San Diego, which is it's funny. In those times, I thought, the market's going to go down. It's going to get easier. The housing will become affordable. I'll make a little bit more money, but. Looking back, 15, 20 years ago, that never happened.
No.
As soon as you start making more money, that dream became almost unattainable. And as you were getting towards it and closer, it seemed to inch further and further away, which leads you to, the current environment.
I think that's going to, with interest rates coming down, I think we're going to see another spike. I was impressed with you running a full-time job, studying, going to school, and you had a goal. You would tell me specifically what your goal was that year.
Yeah.
And I think it was 6 years, wasn't it, that
yeah.
And you were confident you were going to do it. You were comfortable with the time frame, and you stuck to it.
Yeah.
And you graduated.
Oh yeah.
San Diego State University, mechanical engineer.
Yeah. A lot of classes, it definitely wasn't easy, sleeping in parking structures in a vehicle, because the truth is that, they only have a select amount of classes, and time frames. So like there might be a class, just say 10 a.m. on Tuesday, and then 1 p.m. on Tuesday, right? Like Tuesday, Thursday, 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. So you're taking these two classes, and you're not going to drive home and go to sleep. So, hey, you just sleep in your vehicle, in a parking structure. And essentially you're taking these small naps, and then you got to go to work at 9 at night to 5 in the morning. So, and I was taking basically 12 to 15 units, which is, 4 or 5 classes. And it was very,
Yeah,
it was very difficult.
Yeah, it was aggressive, to say the least, and it was interesting and inspiring to watch, to say the least. And I never once doubted that you were going to get it because you were so confident about your path, your goal you set, and you knew the time frame, and you stuck to it.
It's funny because when I did complete it, there would be kind of kids that they were getting ready to maybe graduate high school, or maybe they were early high school, and they would ask, hey, I'm interested in becoming a mechanical engineer. What do you think? Do you have any advice, or do you think that this is something worth pursuing? And I'd say, yeah, sure. But I'd say that all you have to do is you have to be able to basically get beat down every day and come back for more. So and that's not the words that I use, but essentially if you're able to take a hit every day, learn this information, and be able to come back each day and take it again and again and again, and you don't give up.
You can't give up.
The first few years of this degree pursuit, from what I have observed, they basically want to weed you out. So all these lower level classes are essentially more difficult than the upper division classes. And then once you got to the upper division classes, you had the mechanical professors that you could tell they had a little respect for you. And they said, okay, well, they went through essentially the boot camp of these courses. All right. Now, since you took those classes, the lower level classes, you were able to understand the upper level classes. But every class I took, I realized that I didn't learn that class until I took the next level up. When you're learning it, it's very difficult. It was just like, going to the gym, where you're feeling the pain, but your muscles are building and it hurts. And you're not going to grow unless you feel that pain. And essentially that's what school was, I remember being in grade school or high school and saying, why do I need to know this? And there was a 10-year gap from when I went back to college. And I thought, man, if I only understood at the time when I was younger why I needed to know this stuff. But I learned it again, and I kept coming back for more, and you just chip away at it. And what you were saying with, I had a plan, I had a map, and the map was, let me focus on this semester and these classes that I need to take, because I need to take prerequisites, or I need to take these courses to get to those next courses, because I didn't want to take a long time to get this done. I wanted to be efficient and effective, but at the same time, they don't offer all the classes that you need during that semester. That you might have to wait till the following spring, and you really have to be responsible. And nobody's going to come and help you. Nobody's going to come and show you. You can ask, or there might be a counselor or something, but really you're in charge of creating the schedule and executing it.
That's right. So where did it all start for you? In New Jersey? You're born in New Jersey, right?
Where? Yeah. So I grew up, and there it's called South Jersey.
Okay.
So there's a clear distinction, South Jersey, and essentially there's this tri-state area, and I'm going to explain why it's South Jersey. So it's not like California where it's a huge state that essentially takes up the whole coast, right? So you have the tri-state area is essentially New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And typically, the North Jersey is more people that relate to New York. They go to see the New York teams, sports teams. It's closer to New York. For me, where I grew up, New York was over 3 hours away and $20 in tolls. So you didn't have to go up there. We and our family went and lived around Philadelphia or Philly. So when people say, where are you from? I normally say South Jersey. So that's kind of where that comes from.
So what was it like growing up there? You got to tell me some good stories, Ant.
I tell you, it was different times.
You spent a lot of time at the shore, right?
Yeah, summers. So the Jersey Shore and not
Not MTV.
not the MTV. I never actually watched that show. I've seen it in passing. You flip through it, you watch five seconds of it, and I'm sure it's legit. But the Jersey Shore was essentially a 3 or 4 month period of the year of your summer. So it was partial spring, partial fall, but full summer. And you'd have people come from everywhere essentially to come down and vacation. So you'd have people taking, a week off, a weekend off, the whole summer off, and they'd have their shore house. And these shore houses, I mean, everything was packed during the summer. You couldn't get a parking spot, a lot of partying, and I would work summer jobs. So even, from 12 years old all the way up to essentially when I left, I was always working. And that's how you made money. They would have restaurants you'd work at. There's plenty of jobs that I had, but a lot of them were restaurant-based jobs. And there was really no job interviews for any of this stuff. It was just family. Hey, son needs to work here. You guys hiring? Bam. It was all reference-based. It wasn't really interview-based. And you'd work there. And, if you wanted to go back the next summer, you'd go back. And it was great as a kid because you had money, you could buy things. And we learned a lot. We learned how to be responsible, how to get to work on time. These weren't slack jobs. I mean, you were working. It was some of them were actually really tough. But you learned a lot and you had a lot of fun. And I remember a lot of these jobs, they were holiday and weekend based. So when everybody else was out having fun on the 4th of July or having fun on Saturday or Friday night, I mean, those were your prime working times. And I just remember a lot of family events I really didn't get to go to because I had to work. And, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So, there wasn't any vacation days or sick time. You just go.
Did you have some fun?
Yeah. I mean, we made it work, but it was a seasonal environment. And when you work in these seasonal environments, you have to sacrifice. And that's what it was. It was you sacrifice for the summer and you make your money. And then, the rest of the year, essentially, you're a high school student, and
all the tourists go away.
When September comes, typically September, that's where, you start to see the decline in people on the islands. This Jersey Shore is essentially barrier islands. So they're islands that are separate from the mainland, and there's typically a bridge that connects the islands and it connects these barrier islands to the mainland. And all the towns were different, but it's the same setup. It's very densely packed. They're not large properties, very small properties. And over time, the houses went up. So, I'm sure, in the 40s and 50s and 60s, there was, single story houses. And then, you'd have these huge nor'easters or hurricanes. The houses would be damaged. So then they started building them up.
Are these the houses you see on stilts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically they're built up higher, and which is to withstand a flooding, because as a lot of people saw over this last huge hurricane, they were talking about 12 to 15 foot storm swelling. So when the water comes up that high, uh, everything's going to get soaked, and then you have to deal with mold and other issues where a lot of places just can't handle that. So building them up higher, and now a lot of it, well, it started about 20 years ago, but they started going into condos where it was kind of a townhome, and you'd have a 2 or 3 story on each side, separated by a firewall, and that's pretty popular setup out there.
So you're growing up in Jersey,
Yeah.
and when did the Navy come into your life?
The Navy.
Hmm.
So
Right out of high school, or?
no. So after high school, I was 17 when I graduated high school, and I wanted to be free. I wanted to uh, I wanted to experience life and have play by my own rules, essentially. So I ended up getting an apartment with a high school friend, and he went to another technical school, and a different one than I did. And essentially the school that I went to was for electronic service technician. And so we learned basically desktop computers, basic electronics, kind of like Radio Shack style electronics, just electronic components, troubleshooting schematics, using a multimeter, oscilloscope, reading, blueprints, and testing of electronic equipment. And then there was a little bit of electrical. So it was basically like a 10-month course, and there was, every month you learn a different subject. And after that, after I completed that course, I was given a certificate, and I came out to my uncle lived in San Diego, so Rancho San Diego, and my cousin at the time was in the Navy, stationed in Virginia. So basically, he's from San Diego, stationed in Virginia on the other coast. I'm from New Jersey, and I go over to San Diego, and when I'm there,
Were you coming to San Diego to
I
join
went,
the
I
Navy,
went
or?
to, I was in San Diego for a few months, and I worked for a company called Simplex. And with Simplex, I was hired because I had the certificate for electronic service technician, and essentially I was doing jobs around San Diego for Simplex, which is fire systems. So I was pulling wire. The electricians would come in, run all the conduit, and my role was to basically, run fish tape and pull low voltage wire and address fire system devices, whether it's a high heat or a smoke or a pull station, and then run this wire to a panel. And it was an entry level job, and I had it for about 6 months. I remember getting called in to the office, and they said, "Hey, you're doing a really good job. However, we're out of contracts right now, and since you've only been with us for 6 months, we're going to have to let you go." But I really liked living in San Diego. I want to say I was 18 at the time, and the job was about $19 an hour. So this was a lot of money.
Just 30
in
years
99,
ago.
right? I want to say it was like 1999, and $19 an hour was a very good wage at the time. So this went on for about, like I said, it was 6 months, got laid off, and I took like some part-time jobs, and it wasn't really working out. I couldn't find a full-time job. So I ended up going back to New Jersey, and I got a phone call just random call. And the gentleman said, I have an opportunity for you to be a contractor for the Navy. I'm just going to paraphrase what he said. And we can station you in San Diego. So I said, okay. It turns out it was a Navy recruiter. But
that's actually a good pitch.
Like anybody that's ever enlisted and signed up for the military, I don't care which branch it is. The joke that we have is, be careful unless it's in writing, because they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear to entice you, and it's all fair game. You're young, and you hear things you want to hear. Anyway, I took the ASVAB test, and you take this test, and based upon your score, they give you the options of taking a few of these different jobs based on the score that you got, and I'm sure what they need at the time, right? So I had a few options, and one of them was this diesel engineman, essentially a mechanic. And I thought, all right, well, I have this electrical certificate, and I ended up getting a pretty good deal on this contract, and it was for 6 years. And part of this deal, they call it 6YO, 6-year option. Part of this deal was that you're going to sign up for 6, and typically people sign up for 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah,
maybe 5, but this was this 6-year option. It was pretty rare, and the idea is that they were going to give me extra money to go to school, like for college, and they were going to give me a higher rank. That typically everybody starts off at E1. I was going to get this E3, and then when I'm done my school, I get E4, which is a high. It's basically a higher rank. And then they would give me this C school, this special school, C, the letter C, not the ocean C. And this school, which they didn't say what it was, it was just, we promised to give you this school, all right. And I thought about it, because they don't really give you much time. It's basically, hey, they want to get you in, they want to send you to
pressure
boot camp.
sales.
And in August, of that year, I enlisted, and you go to Great Lakes, Illinois for your boot camp.
What was that like?
Boot camp. So,
I mean, here's a guy who just wanted to live by his own rules.
Yeah.
And now you sign up for the Navy, who basically throws that out the window.
You try in life, and that's the pattern. The pattern is you want things your way. Life doesn't give you things your way, so you adapt to life. And you adapt to the situation, the things that are the options that are given to you, and you try to select the best option, whether it works or it doesn't. So boot camp, so I had a few weeks to go. So they give you a date. And the one thing that I wanted to do was, I wasn't a not physical person, but boot camp is very physical. So I wanted to start, getting into the push-ups and sit-ups and running. And I just started off slow, a little bit every day. And I think I had about 30 days to get ready. And believe it or not, just trying to focus on the physical aspect of it really helped, because a lot of the guys I was in with, because when you go to boot camp, there are females there, but they're in their own separate. I mean, they're separate from the males. So in your division, in your group, I think it was like 90 people. It's all male, and you're in this barracks, and the main thing is that, and you have to experience it to really understand it. But the main thing is that before you go into this boot camp, you can make choices. You can do kind of what you want to do, and
what do you mean by that?
You can say what you want to say, and you have options. Well, once you go into boot camp, you no longer make decisions.
Correct.
You're basically told what to do and when to do it. And then there's time set aside for you to do personal things. And it's very minimum, like go to the bathroom or, but the idea is that psychologically, they want people to be able to be told what to do and to execute it. So, and you don't really understand this until it's over. So all your options are taken away as far as making decisions. So there, when the military tells you to do something, you don't say, I think that this would be a better idea, or how about we do option B? No, you're told to do A and you're going to do A. And there's no thinking about it. Like, what if it's do it? And there's a reason for that. And I think it's very successful because you have to be able to tell people to do things and them to actually do it. And you see it in the workplace, where that would be very effective. But I just remember in boot camp, it was very difficult because it's stressful. They would wake you up in the middle of the night. They would wake you up early. They always had you on edge because people feel comfortable in a pattern, right? We're going to get 8 hours of sleep. We're going to get our meals at this time. But if they break that pattern, then they're always going to keep you guessing and they're always going to keep you alert and you're always going to be ready to do what they tell you to do. And I thought it was pretty effective. And I just remember one of the things I'll never forget is, going week after week after week and you're getting fed, but it's basically like, it's regular food. And there's not a lot of options. This is what we're giving you. So they put it on the plate. You might be able to pick if you want this or that, but it's not much options. And I just remember saying to myself, man, I wish I had a Snickers bar, because it's like a treat. Like I wish I had a treat. And because you weren't able to just, hey, time out. I'm going to go down the street and go grab a drink or a snack. That didn't exist. So, being a teenager, 19 years old, 18 years old, and not having that option to just go do what you wanted to do, you had to do what they told you to do. And that was tough. But when you got through it, you realized, you know what? One of the skills that I actually got was being on time and not sleeping during work. So, for example, before the military, you'd probably nod off at work or something if you were bored or something. But with this boot camp, you could actually be punished now if you were to fall asleep during your watch. And nobody's late. You can't be late. So, being late wasn't really a big deal, a couple minutes late. But after this experience, I wasn't nodding off at work and I was showing up usually early, 15 minutes early.
Taught you discipline.
Yeah, yep, definitely.
Do you consider yourself a disciplined teenager or were you pretty wild?
I think that after the military experience, it really cleaned me up. I liked to party before, high school and, you do a lot of things. And, with the military, a lot of that stuff you were doing before, you couldn't do that, it wasn't acceptable essentially. So, cleaned me up. And I just remember, when I got out, I thought, I don't have to do that stuff anymore, So I was able to stay away from that.
I think a great story when you were in San Diego is how you met your wife.
Yeah.
And you were in the military at that time, correct?
Yeah, it was my fifth year out of 6, so I had about a year left.
And you went down to the beach, didn't you?
Yeah.
I remember. You got to tell this story.
There was actually a friend of mine. There was a friend of mine that we were on the ship together, and his father had passed away. So we were like on a deployment essentially. So we're out at sea, and his father had passed away, and I believe they had airlifted him with a helicopter off the ship, and he came back to San Diego. And I was back in San Diego as well. And we were kind of on the same ship. Anyway, we were in this barracks, and he ended up getting in, selected to be in like essentially a roommate. So I think they had like 4 people in a room, and it was just one of those, hey, what do you want to do tonight? Right? Let's just go do something. So
San Diego.
we ended up taking the trolley, right, from there's 32nd Street Naval Station. We took it down, I think like Old Town. And anyway, we went down to Pacific Beach, Belmont Park, location. And it's a lot. I would say it was a little cleaner. That area
back
was
then,
a little cleaner than it is now. But anyway, walking around, and when you live in the shore, you deal with a lot of seasonal people, and if you wanna meet someone, you have to be a little aggressive. You can't really be passive if you want to meet somebody. So, we were used to calling girls and calling them out. Hey, what are you doing and how you doing and all that stuff. Just to get their attention. And it was a skill we learned at a young age. And so we're walking down the boardwalk, and I just said, gave her a line, a pickup line, and they seemed interested anyway. Took them for a walk, and I said, hey, what are you guys here to do? And they said, oh, we're here to swim. And I think it was like 8 or 9 p.m. It was dark. It's August. And I said, all right. So I didn't bring any swim shorts, but anyway.
This is the first time you meet her, right?
Without much detail, I just jumped in the water, and anyway.
Didn't you leave all your clothes on the beach?
I forget, but what happened?
That's a first impression.
They came in, and that was kind of the first.
Surprised she didn't run away.
Meeting. Well, I had fun. I had fun. And then, it was the old, I'll give you a call, and then you wait a couple days, and, give them a call, and that was history, after that.
Fantastic. So you go, we work together at the food processing plant, and then I leave, and about 2 or 3 years pass, correct? About 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I reach out to you because I'm working at a facility.
Right.
And we had a position open for an HVAC mechanic.
Right.
And you just happened to be available.
Yep.
And brought you on. And I was working with a group of about 6 or 7 guys that just spent most of the day trying to figure out how not to work. And this was a building it was a science research building.
Yeah.
And it had some pretty intense equipment, critical equipment.
Vivarium.
Yeah, critical. And you came on board and just turned the tide. Just started fixing things that have been broken for years. It's been broken for years.
Well, in our industry, with this HVAC, the people, the skilled people in the HVAC industry, they make it look really easy. And when you have entry level technicians, that they were a security guard, and they got asked to change filters, or hey, can you help me with this, or they were a custodian. Typically the entry level people that might come into this industry that didn't go to a trade school are going to be security guards or custodians, or just people that are working around HVAC.
Yeah, these facilities jobs, they, for whatever reason, they just try to get guys on the cheap.
Well, the thing is that, you know, skilled labor is it's expensive, and it's not something that you can just program somebody. You can't just send an HVAC guy to a weekend training or a 2-week course. It actually takes years, if not decades, to hone this skill, because our magic is actually troubleshooting. So you can't really teach troubleshooting. Now you can, but the troubleshooting that you can teach is when this breaks this way, this is what you do to fix it. But because there's millions of variables, that way doesn't work. You have to have people that can think outside the box, people that can use ingenuity, because there's no one way of fixing anything. So if somebody's able to think outside the box and just get it up and running, and how do we do that? Because we have to be able to mitigate. A piece of equipment will go down, and the manager or the owner will come out and say, hey, we got to get this back up and running, because, you know, it could be they're losing production now, or something just has to get back up and running. So your role is to get it back up and running. And
Well, I got hired at this job, and basically the contract had 1 year left.
right.
And I was told by the powers that be on the other side that signed the contract that there's no way they're going to sign this contract unless there's a major change in the way that
Yeah.
we were handling the building. So I said to my boss at the time, I got this guy. He's extremely skilled. He's available. Let's get him on board. No problem. Bring him on board. So I brought you in, and we started with, so this whole building is so technical. It was run off a computer.
Right.
And I show you the computer. I said, here's where we start.
Mhm.
And you look at this and you're like, everything's an alarm.
Yeah, there was a lot of alarms.
There was thousands.
Yeah. And you guys had a contract with a controls technician, essentially. And the first thing that I noticed was that this controls technician basically was hiding in a server room.
And remember the idea I said to him?
I think his contract was like 100,000 a year or
Well,
something.
and I said, hey, how can we have so many alarms? He said, well, that's just the way it always is. There's always going to be alarms. I said, that doesn't make sense.
They were
I said,
failure. It was failure. So you can change the alarm to, you know, reasonable set points where it's only going to alarm if there's something critical.
right. And if everything is in failure or alarm,
Yeah.
that was my point. I said, well, how do we know if it's real or not?
Well,
So we started. So I basically gave you a list. I said, here's what we got to do. We gave you a list of things that had to get fixed. One of the things that you were working on was this airflow issue, and there's all these actuators.
yeah, dampers.
Been
Damper
broken
actuators.
for years.
Yeah.
And the guys that have been there for years just like, well, it's just the way it is. It's just been broken for years.
It takes work to fix it. You know, you have to go out there, so we have mechanics, and then we have controls people that do the controls, and these technicians are higher skilled. They understand the system a lot more. But the thing is that you can't just sit on the computer. You
No.
know, you have to go out there. It's above the ceiling tile. It's above. You know, you have to get on a ladder. You got to go out there and replace the actuators. You got to replace the sensors. You got to calibrate the system. So you can't just take the easy road and sit on this tablet and just say, I'm only going to do this, because and essentially that's what happens, is because if they can get away with it, they're going to get away with it. And
They got away with it for years. And I came in
Yeah.
and basically was tasked to clean the place up. And we began doing that. And in the course of a short period of time, were you even there a year?
3 months.
So you were there, and
Then I got a call.
and things are going great. I mean, we're just killing it. I'm getting great reports back. Things are getting fixed. Nobody liked you there because you were making them look bad. All the technicians sitting around. I'll never forget the day you walk into my office and you had that look, and I just knew the look. And you're like, "Hey, got to talk to you." And I'm like, "Oh no." And sure enough, you had an opportunity you had to take. And it's bittersweet because I want to see people move up in life.
Yeah, and I also thought, this is, this is a friend that was really depending on me. So it wasn't just the job, it was a letdown, but at the same time, I justified it because it was a change in career, for a long-term career. So I had been there 3 months, and a lot of the reason why I went to San Diego State, and the reason why I took the job working for the state of California essentially is because a lot of the jobs that I was working in before that were short-term contracts. So, you'd work with a company for a year or two, their contract would be up, and the new company that came in, they might hire you on, but you might take a pay cut. There's no guarantee. You might just lose your job. So having young kids at the time, it wasn't really the path that I wanted to stay on. So I took essentially the job security path, and that was working with the state.
So do you remember your last day? It was the funniest thing ever. So everyone, you put your notice in, which was fair, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And you worked your shift. You would come in, you do the 15 minutes of check-in and computer work that you had to do. You grabbed your tools and you were gone all day. And you're knocking work orders out. I mean, you come at the end of the day and you just have a stack of stuff that got done. And then you walk in, and of course, all the other technicians are still sitting at their computers at the end of the day. They would cut out an hour early so they can sit there and do 15 minutes of work and take an hour to do it.
Yeah, paperwork.
You walk in and everyone kind of looks at you, and you kind of have your tool bag, and there was a desk in the middle, and you announce to everybody, "All right, guys, that's it for me. I'm done. I gave my notice. If anyone wants..." So you take your tool bag, you go, "If anyone wants to see what tools look like when they're actually being used, you can use mine." And you stick it on the table, you about face, and you walk out, and everyone just stared at your tools and looked at you, and I was on the floor laughing. And that's typical Anthony.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, if you have an opportunity, you can use it. And
If you ever,
sometimes, you might not have an opportunity to use it. So.
that was just absolutely hilarious. So let's talk. One of the things I've been excited about bringing you here is because you've got some strong opinions, and and some beliefs, and you got to stand for something.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I found interesting. So my boss at that place, he was big time Hillary Clinton election. This was the 2016 election, and it's Hillary. There's no way Donald Trump's going to win. And all you just walk around going DT.
Yeah.
DT, and he would get so frustrated with you. What was your thought process that made you so confident that that Donald Trump would win in 2016?
Well, so I had a vision years ago, and it might have been before that. There was basically 8 years of Obama. And I was a conservative, right? But there was no leadership that was conservative in the Republican Party. You had John McCain. And John McCain didn't deliver. Nobody was people voted for John McCain, but nobody was happy with John McCain.
And nobody was really
it
excited.
was by default. The same thing with Mitt Romney. Unfortunately, it's almost like the opposing party picked those people because it was like the path of least resistance. Our candidate will win because their candidate is weak. These were weak candidates. Now, maybe the Republican Party at the time said, hey, you guys did your time. You're at the front of the line. You're our guy. Maybe
Tag, you're it.
Maybe that's how it was. I'm not really sure because this is when I started to get into politics, where I started watching, where I became aware. And I was really upset because the Obama years, they were rough economy-wise. And I think that the country really took a turn in a socialist way. When I was younger, we were very patriotic Americans. We loved our country. And what I was seeing was these teachings. And, I was going to college and I was taking courses and I was listening to these professors and taking these humanities classes. And it's almost like they were like, I hate America. America's bad. America's evil. And being in the Navy, I went to all these other countries and I thought, people are coming here. My ancestors came here because it wasn't good over there. People came here because it's not good over there. Why are people saying that America's not good? Why? Why are they saying America's bad? Why are people leaving their country to come here? Whatever way they can. So I'm asking myself these questions. And the Obama years was, from what I gathered, was America's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And Obama brought the change. And the change was, we're going to take from people and we're going to give to these people. And essentially that's what the socialism is. It's the redistribution of wealth. And the thing with socialism is that there is no middle class. You're either elite and you have wealth because you're in power and you have the wealth, or you're basically in poverty and the state's going to take care of you because you're in poverty. So the system's set up to take from one, give to another. And
it's a perfect bell curve.
I felt it. And I didn't like it. It was anti-patriotic because it was America's bad, and I didn't believe in that. I didn't.
You got a lot of that in college.
But the thing, colleges. The thing is that I think that socialism took such a hold of America over the past 60 plus years because of the freedom of speech, the First Amendment. The First Amendment really gives power to socialism. But it's only until the socialists have the power. Once socialists have the power, they don't like freedom of speech because now you're not allowed to have your own opinion.
And it's interesting today, back in the day, the left or the liberals were about freedom of speech, anti-war. And now it's exactly the opposite. They're all about censorship, controlling what you say and how you say it, the words you use.
Yeah.
They're about promoting war. What can we do to send more money to these wars that are going? Look what's happened under the liberal reign, with the falling apart of these countries, the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, all of this stuff. Well, it's almost a bizarro world. Everything is flipped.
So the vision that I had was, it was kind of like, I don't know if you remember, WWF. They call it WWE, but when I was younger, it was WWF. And you had these characters. And these characters were kind of a living superhero when you're a kid. big guys and they're powerful and they're fighting, you know, and typically you'll have a good guy and a bad guy, you know, and people are rooting for the good guy. And the vision that I had was there was going to be this person was going to come, and they had the flag, the American flag. And it was this promoter of the patriotism. It was the promoter of America. And the vision I had was it wasn't clear. It wasn't like this perfect picture that I saw. It was kind of an outline, and it was essentially, to paraphrase it, somebody's going to come and they're going to promote America. It's going to be like they're going to have the flag and they're going to wave the flag, and back, you know, back then when you had these wrestling matches, you know, you somebody would come out with the flag and you'd hear USA, USA. And this was before Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And when you had the John McCain and the Romney, these guys, that they didn't match the vision. They didn't match that America. It was kind of like they were just another manager.
Another cog in the
manager of America, an empty suit. And you didn't have there was no passion there. It was just their job. They were career politicians. And the whole DT, or Donald Trump,
you were extremely confident.
Well, that's because I had a vision, and the vision was, it was kind of like, and when I say a vision, it's kind of like I had a dream, and the dream was this thing, and the thing was this. I went through rough times during these, you know, essentially Obama years, and it was, we need somebody that's going to steer the country in the right direction. And when I saw Donald Trump, which, look, everybody knew Donald Trump.
He's an icon, American icon.
I remember as a young kid going through, you know, the supermarket, and you'd see the tabloids and Donald Trump this and Donald Trump that. And, you know, you'd see him on TV, commercials, movies. He'd be in songs. You know, people like that because there was a time in this country where people saw successful, and look, you can say he did this and he did that, whatever. The point is that, is he a successful person? Yes.
Well, there was a time success was celebrated.
Right. And he was able to generate wealth and generate publicity and generate his image, and people see that as success. It was the typical American success story. And typical American success story could be somebody that came from another country with nothing, worked hard, generated wealth, and then was able to give their children more. Typical American success story could be, you know, a person graduates high school, starts a business, becomes very wealthy and successful, and then is able to give their kids college and have their kids do better than they. The idea is that you started out low and you ended up high. You know, you started with little and you gained, you earned, and you worked for it. The American success story isn't somebody just gave you something and you're good to go. I'm good. I have a government handout and I'm good to go because, hey, I'm getting this little check every month and I got my food and I'm good. I'm satisfied. That's not American success. And you see that. And also, you know, I think genetically, men want to be providers. Men want to provide for their families. You're not going to provide if you're going out there and you're hunting or you're trying to get something to provide for your family, you're trying to work for it. You want to be successful. Why would you just want mediocrity? Why would you want, you know, just a plate of food every day given to you, and it's just the plate of food for free? Nobody wants. That's prison. Prison, you don't have any rule. Like it's rules. You can't make your own choices. Everything's given to you. Your clothes are issued to you. You know, you're told this is when you're going to eat. This is when you're going to have a break time, and essentially, what I started to realize was socialism to a citizen is prison. Nobody's allowed to get up. Nobody's allowed to say anything. The guards are the elite. The guards are the ones that we're going to make the decisions. We're going to tell you what to do. You can't have an opinion. You can't say anything. And that's kind of where I see where we're going.
What do you think about society's 30, 40-year attack on male masculinity? You know, depression and suicide rates amongst men are at an all-time high. You know, toxic masculinity, constant degrading male attributes.
Well, this is where I'm going to weave in the spiritualism. So, so God created man in his image. And then from man, God created woman. Men are men, women are women. This is natural. And there's things that are natural and there's things that are not natural. And the fact is that men are going to make decisions and they're going to try to, like I said, they're going to try to provide for their family. Women are emotional and they want to nurture. So they complement each other. The man complements the woman and the woman complements the man. And this is natural. I think spiritually, what you're talking about with the toxic masculinity, it's basically the new slavery. For example, slaves were, obviously slaves needed to be taken from where they came from and they needed to be brought somewhere else. They weren't able to learn. They weren't able to make their own decisions. And they were basically told what to do, right? And this could be any slaves throughout time, any country. And they were separate from their, from their homeland. And they were treated pretty harshly. So I think the slavery mentality is where the master, in this case, society, or maybe a dark spiritualism, is trying to overcome nature and make men think that they're not men or they're not supposed to be men, or they're trying to change their identity.
Society says men aren't even needed.
Well, that's not necessarily correct because...
Well, no, it's not correct because 99% of our infrastructure is built and maintained by men.
Yeah.
It would all fall apart. We're very, very needed in society, and there's been a push to belittle and denigrate masculinity and males.
Well, I would say there's a difference. There's a difference between sexual and biology. So
what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
The human requires sex to reproduce, right? And this sex is a drive, and the drive is something that most people have, and it's the natural drive to have sex. And that drive requires some sort of fuel or catalyst, and it's lust. Men naturally see a woman and they naturally see the beauty in a woman, and they have thoughts and they have lust, and how there's a drive. What do I need to do to be with her? It's very natural, and it doesn't just have to do with humans, by the way. I mean, most living organisms, that's how they reproduce, right? So there has to be something that says you go there, then when you are together, you reproduce. So in my opinion,
Nature's way of keeping the
in my
species.
opinion, reproductivity requires lust or a sex drive to keep it going. If it didn't have the sex drive, but now the sex drive can be perverted. The sex drive can be perverted by an older man seeing a younger, undeveloped man or a younger, undeveloped woman. And we call that a pedophile. Throughout history, you have these social norms, right? And I'm sure there was an exception to this, but generally, when the female became of a certain age, the female was, I mean, I'm thinking for the most part, from what I've read, married an older male, that a mature older male. And these things could have even been arranged. I'm sure for a long time, we didn't have social media, we didn't have the communication we have, and people married based on necessity. Hey, so and so has this, so and so doesn't. There's lands over here, there's lands over there, and you have to make these arrangements to survive.
Historically, marriage was transactional.
You had to survive. What can this person, how can this person take care of me? And it makes sense. The female is the mother and the nurturer of the family, and the male is the protector and the provider. These things complement it. It's a business transaction, it's a social transaction, it's a survival. And I think that's what the species was intended to have. Now, the lust that I think that as humans, we have a certain degree of lust. Now, it could be full blown, crazy, where you do things that you don't even want to do because, hey, you're so lustful that you're going to go and do whatever.
Do you think that modern man is driven by more than just lust? Are they? Well, I mean, that's kind of
we have desires.
Well, hang on, that's kind of the argument of this toxic masculinity, that we're just aggressors. Right. And we want one thing. Is it possible that it's more complex than that, in your opinion?
I can tell you that part of the curse of the humans were cursed when they sinned against God. And part of the curse was that the woman would desire her husband. And
that doesn't sound like a curse to me.
Well, look, I didn't make it up. It's just this is what it is. So the idea is that women desire the man, and they want to be. I mean, you think about it. Young women. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's maturing, and she wants to be recognized by men. I mean, it's natural. Younger males, they want to be recognized by women. They want to walk down the street and have a woman acknowledge them and get a compliment. Think about it. Oh, your eyes are so beautiful. Whether a man saying it to a woman or a woman saying it to a man, or, oh, I like what you're wearing. These are compliments that, wow, and then, so there's the lust, and then there's the desire to be wanted or accepted, or it's two ways. So it's, I see that, I like that, and then in the opposite way, it's they like me, they want me, and that can be manipulated. There's, you think about it. You have you have a pimp. And the pimp can manipulate the women to go out and do certain things and just bring back the money, right? And this is
for protection.
I'm just saying, I mean, or 1,000 years ago, there's a brothel of women, look, the idea is, or the old west, you'd have the whorehouse, but the idea is it's a perversion. It's not supposed to be that way, but they're taking advantage of these desires that human beings have. I also think that the youth, when you're young, and these chemicals are changing, your hormones are changing, you're starting to mature, you don't really know what's going on because you're like, well, I haven't really been thinking this way, what's going on now? And it just naturally happens. I think that there's a period where you can be convinced that right or wrong, right? Because if somebody tells you, typically as you're growing up, your parents hopefully are telling you what's right and wrong, right? If your parents aren't telling you what's right and wrong, then the school's going to tell you what's right and wrong. And there's a conflict there because sometimes the school says what's right and wrong, and it doesn't always mesh with what the parents think's right and wrong. And then if the school isn't working, then maybe your friends are telling you what's right and wrong. Then you have people that, let's just say you have a young adult and they're caught off with an older adult that maybe takes advantage of them. And they're saying, oh, that this is the right thing to do. And the kid's not old enough to think, am I doing the right thing? And unfortunately,
Well,
there's a perversion there where they're easily perverted. And then they end up doing something and they think, you know what, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do, or maybe that hurt. Or was I supposed to do that? And they don't even tell anybody because, and it ends up, hey, look, they were just molested. They didn't even know it because they didn't know that this was bad or they weren't supposed to do it, but there was a shame about it. And the shame goes both ways. The shame is I'm ashamed that this happened to me, and I'm ashamed to tell anybody because I don't want to be bad. I don't want to be the person that did that. I don't want to get caught. So then they're also told, hey, if you tell anybody, I'm gonna do something. So the idea is that unfortunately, I haven't really heard a lot of cases of adults being molested.
Well, it would be rape in that situation, and that does happen. But with children, they're they're very, very vulnerable in that they have no agency in their life.
Right.
So, like you said, the parents need to teach right and wrong. Now, the school system is, we've given all the control over to the school system.
Not necessarily.
Well, a lot of control because parents don't want to do their jobs. In California, they passed a law that, they can transition your child without your permission.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure the parent's going to start to see this quote unquote transition. And the thing is there's still...
Do you think the pendulum is swinging back the other way? Because it's gone pretty far with this woke nonsense.
I'm actually going to take a step back and say that Americans have not read history. And
They're not taught.
No. Forget the teaching. Look, the taught, okay, let's go back 200 years ago. Most human beings did not know how to read 200 years ago, right? So you'd have to be taught. Think of the Catholic Church. I was raised Catholic, and the priest read this word, and they told you, hey, this is what it says, and all right, I'll take your word for it, but human beings in this day and age, they know how to read at an early age. The problem is that we take it for granted. We don't read. We don't study history. We don't read this word of God. Therefore, this is where we're at. We are here because people forgot history. And because they left their God, they don't want, you know, Americans.
Do you think a lot of our problems is because that they've wandered away
Americans
from God and a belief in God?
Americans don't need God.
Is that
And
what you believe?
if
That's
well,
what Americans think?
if you think about it like this, um, God provides you with His Word, and it's called the Bible, His Word. If humans don't read this Word, then they don't talk to God, because God's telling you His story through this book, this Word. You read the book, and then you understand His story, and this story is actually it essentially, the Old Testament is these cycles, and the cycles are God comes to you and says, I'm going to take care of you, and I want you to be my people. I want you to follow me. And the people say, all right. And they follow God, and then maybe a generation passes, and the people are taken care of. They have what they need. They don't have to hurt themselves or go to war. God's taking care of them. And they're kind of like, I guess you could call it the boomers.
Mm.
The boomers, their parents went to war. Their parents went through the Great Depression. Their parents were the ones that suffered. And the boomers were getting high. Summer of '69, you know, going to San Francisco and living in a commune. And as the new people came in, they said, hey, what do you got, man? And the person gave them what they got, and they lived off of it. But the thing is that they weren't producing anything, so they just consumed whoever was coming in and bringing the stuff, or food or money or whatever. And it didn't work. It fell apart. And that generation who left God, they didn't need God. They're running the country. They are the government. And
They're heading out, though. The boomers are on their way out.
Most of this government doesn't believe in God, because with socialism, you can't have God. Socialism and God are in a complete conflict, because with socialism, government is God. And religion is essentially not good, because then the people wouldn't listen to government. They would follow their God.
Let's talk about government, because one of the reasons why I wanted to get you in here is because I know you have very strong opinions and convictions. And we're up 1 week away, less than a week away from a major election,
Right,
where we have two diametrically opposed candidates. We got DT, Donald Trump, back in the race. We got Kamala. Interestingly, at her rally was yesterday, the day before, somebody yelled, Jesus Christ is Lord, or something along those lines. And she went on microphone and said, hey, you're at the wrong rally. And so we have somebody who professes a belief in God in Donald Trump, and you have somebody who is shunning somebody in her own rally about a belief in God. What's your prediction for the election, and if one or the other wins? What is your prediction for the country if Kamala wins?
Okay, so I personally think that the people deserve this. I believe it was Thomas Jefferson. Basically, the people are going to get the government that they deserve. And what that means, if you look in the Old Testament, when the king, that God didn't want them to have a king, the people wanted a king. God was actually kind of insulted and said, all right, you want a king, I'll give you a king. But there's a catch. And the catch is that when the king, or our government, is good, holy, however you want to call it, then we're good. We're blessed. We're a blessed country. And if they're not, then we're cursed, essentially. And the curses are bad. The blessings are good. The blessings are awesome. The curses are bad. And what I'm trying to say is that if we go with leaders that have a certain set of values, then that's who's representing us, and that's who's over us. So we have the opportunity to either select a blessing or a curse. Now, the parties are going to change. So in a snapshot in time, I will say that at this time in history, the Democratic Party has gone full left, full socialism, anti-God, they're basically anti-everything, right? What do they really stand for? They stand for the inversion of everything that this myself grew up with thinking, wow, this is good. So I look at the Democratic Party and I think this represents everything that is against me, essentially, as a human being, as a man, as my race, my religion. They're against me. They hate me. So what's happening is all these people that are hated by the left, by socialism, the outcasts that aren't in this represented class are starting to say, where do I go? You know, perfect example, RFK, perfect example, Tulsi Gabbard, perfect example, people that were just disenfranchised.
Heck, even Bill Maher.
They were cast out. They were cast out because they didn't go 100% with the left. If you're not 100% on board, you're an enemy and you're cast out. All right. Well, they're losing a lot of people. They're not gaining a lot of people. And unfortunately, my prediction is that all these outcasts are going to now fill this Republican Party, which it's not perfect, but they're taking more and more people because these people are being left out and they're not being represented. And I was told that we're supposed to be electing representatives, people that represent us, not represent people groups. So, like, for example, there's all these myths and in the left of, well, you can't do that because you're not this, and you can't do, there's all these rules, by the way. And, cultural appropriation and this whole woke, the woke thing is actually what's destroying politics. It's destroying the country. And I understand the intention, but the reality is that it's an imperfect system that's being imposed.
Well, wait, you understand the intention. What in your opinion, what is the intention of all these woke policies?
I think the intention is that with socialism, you have the oppressed and you have the oppressor, right? The oppressor in America is success, right? It's a certain religion. It's a certain skin type. It's a certain ethnicity. They are the ones that are, and look, you can fill in the blank because it is what it is. It might even shift. This thing could shift. So, for example, right now, Israel, right? This is huge. And I'm going to tie it back into the Bible. Israel has one of the most historical covenants with God. Before Christians and before Muslims, Israel had a covenant with God. And there's blessings and curses. And throughout time, you can see that these people were distributed, attacked,
enslaved.
Yeah, enslaved. They were basically destroyed to a point.
And anti-Semitism is at an all-time high right now.
It's always ebbed and flowed throughout history. And right now, we're hitting a high water mark that, if you think about it, didn't we just go through World War II? Didn't this just happen? I mean, I didn't, obviously I didn't live through World War II, but I've seen enough and I've read enough that we should have learned from those mistakes, right? So this is gonna lead me to the woke. Now, the intention of wokeism, in my opinion, because you're not going to see a lot of definitions on this stuff, because you can't define this stuff. If you define it, then you can attack it and you can defeat it. With woke, I think that the intention was to basically take something that's powerful and undermine it. And this happens in nature. This is something that naturally happens, where the strong become weak and the weak become
So
strong.
what power are they trying to undermine?
I think it's just the American values in itself. So some of the things that you have brought up are, the masculinity. So if men were power, if men represented power, then they're the oppressor, and the oppressor must be taken down. So therefore, we're going to invert men and we're going to raise anti-men. I didn't say we were going to raise women, because believe it or not, women came from men and they complement each other. The two shall become one. So when we're married, we become one. So the male and the female become one, because the woman Eve came from Adam. God put Adam to sleep, took out his rib, and created woman. Woman came from man. So when the two become one, it's back to the original design.
So you think that
Marriage is the original design.
wokeism is actively destroying masculinity?
Well, it has to. It also has to pit the races against each other, and this is the best part. The best part is that because people don't understand the word of God, then they don't understand that all the races are actually the same. So, to summarize, there was a flood, and only a few people survived the flood. And the best part is that if you go back to a lot of ancient religions, they actually call out the flood. A lot of ancient there's a lot of creationism, where if it's been studied, the book of Genesis, and there's a lot of proven things in history where you can trace it back through different cultures, that there was this flood. Long story short, only a few people survive. So those people that survive end up going out throughout the world and inhabiting it. So the human beings are actually just related. And I think that if you have God, and then you have something that's against God, you have man, you have something that's against man, you have our country, and you have something that's against country. There's always a counter in nature, right? The wind, you have a low pressure and a high pressure, and the difference is the wind. Right? There's no light, there's light.
So what happens if the woke movement wins?
I don't think it can win. I think that it'll, just like anything else, like, okay, let's call it a virus or a pandemic. It'll just like most things in nature, it'll destroy a certain amount, but then what's left will regrow. And typically when things regrow in nature, they're immune, they're stronger. I know that my wife got COVID twice, tested positive. My daughter got it once or twice. We live in a small home, and me and my sons never got it. Were we immune to it? I don't know. I think maybe we were. the idea is that not everybody's going to catch this virus and be wiped out. Some people genetically are resistant to it. So the the woke is a resistance, and it our lives weren't supposed to be easy. Human being, we were cursed, right? So the curse is that we're going to have to go to work, and we're going to have to eat, and we're going to have to sweat, and there's going to be death. And that's the curse. So we're gonna have to work very hard. Things aren't gonna be easy. We're gonna have resistance. We're gonna have arguments. We're gonna have fights. We're gonna have good days and bad days. That's our role here on Earth. It wasn't always like this. It wasn't designed like this, but this is where we're at.
Do you think that the pushback, because there is pushback on woke, and there is pushback on this far left leaning nonsense, practically, as you mentioned, RFK and Tulsi Gabbard, all of these people that are traditional JFK Democrats, they've been shunned, they've been canceled by their own party. Do you think that that's enough momentum so that Donald Trump will win? Or do you think that the momentum is not there yet?
I think that Donald Trump, just to answer the question,
Yeah, I'm trying to get you on
I think
record.
that Donald Trump is probably going to win, and I think it's because the left uses the woke as a tool to that is their weapon, right? Their weapon is us versus them. And but the problem is that most human beings don't hate. Unfortunately, woke has
It
there,
popularized hate.
there's an ingredient in being woke that is hate. So it's the driver. It's the force that they use, because you can't have woke there. You have to have the oppressor and the oppressed. There is no middle ground. So you're either good or you're evil. And with woke, they've created a certain class of people that is protected, and then you have the unprotected. So when you have protected and unprotected, you have what we had in Europe in the 30s.
And what was that?
I think you had basically the Great Depression. You had people that weren't making money, and they were starving. There was no industry, and things were kind of falling apart. It was basically after World War One, and they thought, we need a scapegoat. We need somebody that we can look at and say, that's why we don't have what we need. Those people. With wokeism, they did the same thing. Obviously what I'm trying to point to is you have this Nazism, and you have the enemy of the Nazism that they created. They created the enemy, and it was the Jews. And unfortunately, they thought, well, once we get rid of this problem, we're good. Well, that's not good. Once you get rid of your enemy, is everything going to be okay? I don't think it's going to happen like that. I think that America has to go back to responsibility, taking responsibility. And this country was created by the fact that the adult had the right to vote. And they thought, you know what, you're responsible. We're going to give you the right to vote. And you're going to be able to make your own decisions. And you're going to vote for those decisions because you're responsible and you're an adult. Now, we can throw in details like, whoa, these people weren't allowed to vote, and these. Look, I get it. In history, it was never perfect. But the fact is that fast forward to now, people can vote. And really, it's at an age point right now. So maybe 500 years or 1,000 years from now, they can criticize us and say, well, you only allowed people to vote when they were 18. Look, we're not perfect, right? If you look back in time, you can always criticize them and say, oh, well, you guys didn't do this and you guys didn't
Well,
do that,
let's
right?
let's talk about the vote, because there's a lot of conversation right now with this election coming up. You know, and there was a lot of accusations back in the 2020 election of voter fraud and other things along those lines. What is your opinion about the voting process today?
I think with this
What is your
whole,
opinion on
I
that?
think
What do you
I
do?
think
You
that
think our do you think our election system is sound?
America has exported democracy for a long time. Since America's creation, we exported democracy. Everybody should be democracy. Look at us,
You mean
American
around the world?
exceptionalism. We pushed it on everybody, and some of them took it. But at the same time we were exporting democracy, we imported socialism. And with socialism, the end goal is they don't you don't even get to vote.
Mm-mm.
Vote. You're not responsible enough to vote. So
Well, yeah, they don't. Well, the elites don't think that you have the mental capacity, the intelligence to actually cast a vote.
we're not
They think they know what's best
we're
for
not
you.
100% socialist in America, but we're getting damn close to it. And it's so close that as people that leave extremely socialist countries come here, they go, wait a minute, I left this. What do you guys do?
Oh,
What
you
are
hear it all the
doing?
time.
Why are you acting like this? I just left there because I didn't like this. So we're going towards extreme socialism, and essentially that's what the far left is. And
Do you see any hope in putting an end to
look,
that?
there's always a hope to the end of the war, but a lot of people have to get hurt before we get there. So
So, are we at the beginning of this social
um,
war? The middle? Are we
uh,
close to the end? In your opinion?
I think that biblically speaking, there's going to be a lot of destruction and a lot of pain, because whenever the only thing that takes away sin, and sin is essentially, you could consider sin as like a mistake, like it's something that's wrong. How do we right the wrongs? It requires blood. So when someone kills someone, there's blood owed, right? I mean, you go back in history, somebody killed somebody, and then that person got their life taken because, hey, you could call an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You had to pay the price. America has to pay the price.
What is that price?
It's suffering. It's basically what we're going through, and then as we go through it, it changes us. So just like as we train, or as we work hard and we start to build a resistance, we have to take the hits of socialism, learn from the mistakes of socialism, live it, get our house taken, have our family persecuted, have someone in your family arrested because of their beliefs, have someone lose their job because they took a stance on, we could say homosexuality, or just somebody has an opinion, uses their First Amendment, says something, they get canceled. As these people start feeling the effects of socialism, and they're not happy anymore, because when they were content and they were happy, they didn't care. Hey, whatever. But as they started taking these hits, getting canceled, getting kicked out, getting shunned, getting hurt, family members, let's, as these things happen, then people start to go, hey, you know what? I don't like that.
I think that's why we see a shift from
And
these these historical Democrats that you mentioned earlier, and you're seeing this shift because now it's happening to them. That own movement of wokeism is starting to affect them, and they're getting canceled.
'Cause-
They're losing their jobs. They're being told what they can and cannot say.
Yeah.
They're telling them their beliefs are not accepted.
You can try to convince somebody their opinion by telling them. You know, like you can be the left and you can say, "Oh, this is right and this is wrong," but until you feel the effects, like let's just say racism, right? I completely agree that there was very, very strong times of racism in America. Anybody that denies that, I'm sorry, I don't see any credibility. I think that there was very strong events that were very racist, and I think that America, for the most part, has realized, hey, you know what? Maybe some of the stuff that happened in the past, it wasn't right. And now that there's more communication, now that you can see things, now that people are living together, because you think about it, if you had a town A and a town B, and town B never came to town A, well, then you're going to think, well, town B, something's wrong with those people. I never seen them. And it's a mystery. And whenever you have a mystery, there's a little bit of fear in there because fear is of the unknown. So you fear this thing that you don't know. Well, it's kind of hard to fear the unknown when you have the media and, social media, the internet. You're working with different people, you're talking. Now, you can play a game with somebody in another country that doesn't even speak the language, but it's translated for you. So you're talking and you're interacting with people that you wouldn't have normally done 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 5,000. So the idea is that because we're interacting with each other more and as different people, we're starting to realize, hey, you know what? Maybe that's not the way to go. And in my opinion, you see less and less racism now than you did 50 years ago, 100 years ago.
The racism is coming from the top. They're losing from government officials, from the race baiting crowd. They are losing their grip on it, so they have to keep conquering. They divide and conquer. They have to come up with the narrative that racism is at its all-time high.
And to prove that, I would just throw out like interracial marriage. Interracial marriage 100 years ago, very, very, very taboo. I'm sure people would be shunned. Family members be like, you know what? I'm not really associating with this person anymore. And look, you could X, Y, you could swap them out, whatever this and whatever that. It was just something that wasn't accepted. And people would get weird looks and this and in this day and age, it's not really a big deal.
Not at all.
And that itself proves that I think we may be going in the right direction. But if you subscribe to woke, then woke is going to tell you that you're bad. You're bad because of the color of your skin or where you came from. And when I was younger, we were taught in grade school discrimination and prejudice. And what we were taught was discrimination and prejudice. The prejudice was basically...
Come closer to your microphone.
The prejudice was prejudging somebody, seeing somebody and saying, oh, well, obviously that person is like this. I don't even know them, but I'm just going to prejudge them. They must be like this. I don't even know them. I've never even interacted with them. I'm just going to judge them based upon what they look like, where they came from, what they're dressed as. I prejudge you. And then the discrimination is treating somebody different because of one of these things, right? And I don't think it made sense. You encountered prejudice, you encountered racism, and you were able to identify it. And there was instances where you could speak on it or say, hey, I didn't really agree with that. And then there was, well, this is the way it is, and there's not much you can do about it, right? So now I don't think, and I can't really point to, let's just call it how could I call it? Name something that's that woke is against. What comes to mind when you think what is it against? What is it? What is the enemy of woke? What are they trying to
Well,
take down?
they're trying to take down the status quo.
Right.
So whatever is historical, whatever is traditional, whatever is the status quo, but
Yeah.
they're trying to take down tradition, right? They're trying to take down gender identity. They're trying to take down biology. They're trying to take down science.
Right.
They're trying to take down anything that allows a person to be able to think for themselves.
Well,
If you have strong opinions based on tradition, based on real science, then you will be canceled, you will be shunned, you will be ostracized.
Tradition's going to change over time, but it doesn't have to instantly be changed. And I think that the woke might be forcing something that takes time. Changes take time. If you change something too fast, then you took away somebody's freedom and you made a decision for them.
Do you think that, I mean, you've got some real strong opinions that are kind of dark. Do we have a dark future, or are you optimistic that change in a positive direction is coming?
What I'm saying is that, I'll reference, World War II again. A lot of people had to go through very difficult things to have peace. But after that time, this country, after that war, did great. And our whole our whole style of life and everything, there was a struggle, and then after it was kind of like there was a fire, and then after the fire there was this growth, this huge growth, and it was natural, and it required blood to be paid. I think that there's going to be struggle. There's going to be this.
Well, where do you think we are?
There's going to be blood.
Where do you think we are in that struggle? Are we at the beginning?
I personally believe that if a COVID-like situation was to ever come up again, I think that people would start to rebel. So,
are you talking revolution?
I don't know about a revolution, but I would say that you can fool somebody once in their lifetime, but you can't fool them twice. Okay. And that's why it usually takes over a lifetime to redo these things. That's why you see generations. There's like a generation until it happens again.
About every 50 years.
So you're going to be able to push the human being so far until he's going to fight back, because the reality is that with woke, they don't understand the collateral damage that they're doing. So when they destroy,
do you think they don't understand it?
When they destroy,
or do you think that's part of the process?
When they destroy somebody's life, or they destroy reputation, or their family's destroyed, or a business is destroyed, and all that, it's just collateral damage. But the fact is that everything in nature has a counter. So there's going to be the counter woke. And it's funny because, when I was younger, you'd have you'd have basically children of the hippies, and they wanted to emulate their parents, and they kind of started acting like this was like the 90s essentially, and you had this kind of, the hippies were kind of coming back, and the kids, the teenagers, and like I said, the children emulated their parents.
So do you see this anti-woke movement growing and getting stronger?
It's gonna have its followers, and then as it starts to destroy, it's going to create a resistance against it. And the hippies were the resistance, right? The hippies were the counterculture,
Mm-hmm.
but now the hippies are cool. So all the things that the hippies envisioned is America. It really is. It's become mainstream. So what'll happen is you'll have the mainstream and the counterculture. And now this conservative party is the counterculture, and they're starting to develop the resistance because
Well, I've been saying for a long time that the Republican Party needed a rebranding. I think they've gotten more than a rebranding with Donald Trump, and with the help of the woke movement, because now people are starting to realize on both sides, the left and the right, that they are going to be victims of this counterculture or this oppressive movement. And this is why you see people, prominent people, supporting the Republican Party, Donald Trump particularly, people you never thought you would actually see pushing back. I mean, I talk about Bill Maher, who's pushing back hard on the woke left because he sees it as oppressive. He sees them against freedom of speech. He sees them against our freedoms.
Yeah, but he's also matured.
He has matured, but as he says, and a lot of these people, I'm not the one that changed. The left has changed. And even Elon Musk says that. He says, no, I haven't changed. It's that the left has.
It's easy to say that. I would say the difference is that who is grounded with biblical principle? That is the question. The thing with democracy is that democracy favors the majority, right? You think about it, the majority picks. With socialism, it's anti-democracy. The majority has no power. If the majority had power, it can't be ruled. It can't be taken advantage of.
Yeah, the majority has to be oppressed.
So how do we do that in America? Well, you know, if the majority of America is religion, then we have to go anti-religion. If the majority of America is a certain race, we have to go, against that. If the majority of America believes in whatever, then we have to be against that. And that's what this thing is. Because look, the woke could be a joke 2 years from now, and like people are just like, oh yeah, remember when? Remember when there was.
Do you think that? Do you think we're moving in a positive direction towards?
I think that it's always happened because
towards anti-woke.
The real fundamental problem is that there's God and then there's anti-God, and anti-God lives longer than human beings live. So he's able to play the game over human lifespans. So the tricks that he pulled with other generations, he can pull with us now. And we haven't experienced that. We're experiencing now. We're experiencing anti-God. And that's what these powers are. It's against. America was created, like I said, on the principle that you are responsible. We're going to let you vote. You're an adult. We're all going to take care of each other in this form of government, we the people. And the funny thing is that the left perverts that to establish and make up, I guess you could say, excuses for what they do and what they tell people. For them, the ends are worth the means, they will sacrifice anybody to get what they want. And what you see in the politics is that it's win at all costs. And when you win at all costs, there are no rules. And when there are no rules, you're allowed to lie. And when you're allowed to lie, all you got to do is call your opponent a liar. And if you're going to kill or assassinate, then you're going to say, oh, you're the killer, you're the assassinator. And they're going to basically project everything that they want to do and they are doing on the other person, because there's no morals.
So
Morals are just out. And woke is the new morals. Woke is the new manners. Woke, when you were little, you were told, hey, hold the door open for the next person. Give up your seat to, an older person. These were manners. Woke is trying to initiate new manners, the new culture, the new way it should be. But it's not natural. It's actually unnatural.
are you optimistic? You have children that are entering adulthood. Are you optimistic about their future, or
If you teach your children the word of God, then when they get older, they're going to be all right.
is the country going to be all right?
If you hide, it's up to the people. Look, each individual human being has to make their own decision. And as a collective, depending on what they choose and who they choose, because look, the reality is that there's power in the vote. And if Americans can vote in the right way for the right reasons, well, then they're going to get the right result. And if they vote for the wrong way for the wrong reasons, they're going to get the wrong result. And I think for a while we've getting the wrong result, and it's starting to upset a lot of people. So if we're still a democracy and majority of people don't like the direction that we're going, what's the purpose of the democracy? We need to vote it back, or we need to vote it in the right direction.
So would you say you're optimistic or pessimistic about our future?
Well, ultimately, you have to be optimistic, because if you're not optimistic about the future, then what's the point? That's really sad. But I think that we're going to go through some pretty tough times. I would even say up to including Second Great Depression, up to and including a Third World War. America's had it good for a long time, and we may just have to pay a heavy price to have peace. After 9/11, Americans banded together, and it was like this, it was a revival. There was a revival because, hey, we all got screwed. We got screwed. It wasn't, I got screwed and you didn't, or you're rich and I'm poor, or you're this and I'm that. There was no division. It was, we all got hit and we all realized it, and we all collectively said, hey, we're Americans. And there was a revival of patriotism at that time.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So what has to hit America for us to say, hey, you know what? I messed up.
Why do you think?
Let's work together on this one. I would love, and it's sad to say, but I would love to see something happen to this country to where both sides of the aisle go, you know what? Let's do this. When I was younger, there was a show called
tragedy.
There was a show.
Tragedy would bring us together.
There was a show called G.I. Joe that I used to watch when I was like 5 or 6, and it was a cartoon, and it was like, you had the good soldiers and this evil cobra, but every once in a while there would be a greater evil, and they'd have to actually, these enemies would actually have to, hey, we'll stop fighting each other. We got to fight the greater evil. America has to fight the greater evil to actually work together. It's just like a husband and a wife that hate each other.
Well, that's not good.
No, but think about it. What if something happens to the husband and the wife, and they go, you know what? I think something happens bigger than us. Let's work.
So America needs to find that thing that is bigger than these squabbles.
America is not going to politically get divorced, so they have to stop working on fighting each other and start working on working together, because that's what the politicians are really trying to say, but they can't say it because they can't talk about God. And the fact is that we're a divided people, but until we fight an enemy that we both are getting affected by, then we can put down our differences and say, all right, let's fight that larger enemy. And that could be, I mean, it could be a nuclear explosion
Oh, God.
in a city. It could
Let's hope
be
not.
it could be an invasion of another country invades. It could be a financial collapse that was caused by something else, somewhere else. But you know, if you have a COVID virus and it comes from another country, and this country's not even willing to point out that it came from another country, and they're going to cover it up, we're not really there yet. But we might get hit so hard unexpectedly that we literally, like I said, people reach across the aisle and say, you know what, let's knock that out together.
Well, listen, Anthony, I hope you're wrong. I hope we can actually figure this out without major international tragedy, God forbid, something as terrible as 9/11 and worse, World War III, with the kind of nuclear threat that this world has. But you know, it's eye-opening, your thoughts, your opinions.
You can only speculate. You know, if you were able to describe what's going to happen in the future in intense detail, it come on, man. No, you know, that's crazy.
Well,
But you know, we'll see what happens, and you know,
well, I think that's a whole hell of a lot of information and ideas and opinions for people to digest. And I really appreciate your openness. I knew this would be exciting. I knew this would be intense. And that's why I wanted to have you on. And I'm really curious to see the feedback on what people think about where we're at and where America is going.
awesome.
Appreciate you coming out, man.
Thank you.
Hope the sun is a little brighter in your day tomorrow.
It'll be fine. It's just another day.
Understood. Well, thanks, Anthony.
All right.
You've been listening to Real People, Real Life. Our passion is to have real conversations with real people who've made it. Real people who've made it, who did it on their own terms. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, catch us on Twitter or X at RPRL Podcast and on YouTube at Real People, Real